For God, for country, for truth, for justice, for the Republic. You're listening to the Powder Monkey Podcast on PirateInfoWars.com. Episode 33 of the Powder Monkey Podcast, and back joining us again, sailing the Sea of Lies with us, live and in living color today. We have author, researcher, Vatican correspondent for InfoWars, Vatican Insider, patriot, freedom fighter, I could go on and on, international man of mystery, Leo Zagami. Thank you for coming back toward the Powder.
Thank you for having me back on. It was a pleasure, and it's great to be talking with your audience again.
Awesome. I know that I'm going to entitle this episode 33, and a lot of people, when they see this, probably because of your background and things like that, they may think that we're going to talk Illuminati, we're going to talk Masons, we're going to talk 33, the numbers. And then, there's a lot to cover though. And it may not go in the direction that people think though. And so there's a lot to cover. When you came on last year, it was February the 18th of 2020. And, COVID didn't exist. You and I right now are recording this in a dystopian nightmare.
I already warned you back then that
you
COVID existed, and it was already on its way to become this dystopian nightmare.
And you did. And I want to thank you because you saw my post around Christmas time. And even though I watched that episode where you talked about Artemisia Annua, you kind of messaged me and said, "Hey, get this, you'll be right as rain." In no time, couple droppers, man. Once it arrived, I had my taste back. I had my smell back. Things started. I started.
So, you are a living proof that sweet wormwood, which is also cited in the Bible, it's a real story. It's not just an hypothesis. And I wish that people listen to me from the start of this whole adventure, because I lost a lot of viewers between that point and the point in which they then started to remove my channels. Mainly because I was denouncing the reality of this bacteriological warfare virus, and I was denouncing it in a moment in which it wasn't very popular to do so. People wanted to believe that maybe it didn't exist, but by doing that, they were actually, in a way, helping out the spread of the virus, which in turn was created in a lab in China, and it was released by the Chinese to sabotage the 45th president and also to sabotage the American way of life. And they seem to have been pretty successful in doing that. Of course, the censorship has increased to a level which was unimaginable a year ago. But everything was already presented in my books. If you go and get this book, Volume 5, in the new edition, which I published last year, basically I talked about there was a mask on top of the Statue of Liberty, and everything that I've explained there is still valid and is actually more valid than ever. So I just wish that some people would have listened instead of listening to the QAnon rubbish and other disinformants.
I kind of stepped in it when I was on your show after Richmond, when you had your Patriots show, and we talked about Richmond, and I kind of stepped in it. I said something like, "I trust the plan," and when I think, at the time, a lot of people, a lot of information came out there, but I was referring to God's plan. The what is written, what has been written, what will come to pass. And so, but I stepped in it. And so I sort of learned to be a little more cautious about using jargon that sounds like QAnon. But now, Steve, when the whole irradiated ballots came about, and I'm still hoping that with these recounts, maybe something might come about. But Leo, it's
for that reason, I have my green shirt in honor of the recounts that are done in various colors of shirts. So the green one is the ones that are maybe plausible in the sense that they plausible false manipulated votes. Who knows? We can't really talk about it because it's absolutely forbidden.
Absolutely.
And algorithms are triggered very easily these days, so we don't want to get them to
or fact check pop up on the I'll have to post a fact check of myself there, and a big picture of Brian Stelter, and we'll just make him look all good there. But and it has, it has become a moment in time where people cannot deny very soon what's in front of them. These vaccines, the things that are happening. Francis Boyle is giving recommendations on what to tell governments and military when they come to you and try to mandate a vaccine now. It is the
I've been collaborating for a year with Dr. Paul Cottrell, who's been one of the first people from the scientific community to advance the hypothesis that was coming out from a lab. And at the same time, he never suffered the same censorship he suffered since I came on board. And the last strike was given to him a few hours ago with our latest videos that we just recorded yesterday morning and we broadcast on our various platforms. So we have now bypassed some of the censorship by agreeing to relay our broadcast also on a radio. A radio is called Global Enlightenment Radio Network. And we're gonna be probably relying more on radios and other means because the big tech social media, it's absolutely unreliable.
Sure, the old pirate radio, the old ham radio, even
that's a good one.
You just have to. You have to at some point. And I have friends who say at some point you're going to spread information by drops, where that's the only way you're going to be able to get your information out. You drop a thumb drive somewhere, and it is, and we should never have gotten to this point. Our system has failed us. Our elected officials have failed us. In 2018, I was telling the Republican Party in West Virginia, you're being censored, and your opponents are not. You are being,
that is something that I really think is one of the big mistakes of both the Trump presidency to not be so fast in reacting to the censorship from the very early stages in which maybe, they started with InfoWars, but that was just the beginning of their purge. And I was actually a victim of censorship even before InfoWars, because by 2013 they had already removed 5 of my Facebook accounts, and I had already problems with censorship. And that's why I ended up writing books. When I started my experience on the internet in 2006, I was doing this blog, and immediately, it was maybe 2 months after I started in September, and by end of September, and by basically the 5th of November, I still remember, early November, 4th or 5th of November of 2006, I had the police, I had the social workers, I had the intelligence at my door in Norway, and coming inside my house and literally threatening me and my former wife at the time to take even my child and stuff, which, after happened in a different way, but it kind of was an experience that stood with me, because it was like they were directly threatening you, either you stop with this blog, or either we're gonna affect your life. And I didn't stop, of course. I never stopped. And
Right.
Unfortunately, then what became my former wife, she gave up the fight, and so I never saw my son again. And that is many years ago, 2008. We are in 2021. But I never stopped. I never stopped writing the books, which was something that I started with my new wife, which is still my wife, and which helps me now with my current publishing company, Cursum Perficio. We also came to the US in 2014 and found a publishing company which started to publish my books here in the US, which was this guy called Brad Olsen, which was brought to my attention by Sean Stone, the son of Oliver Stone. Mm-hmm. And we tried. I mean, we tried to survive the censorship, and I think that we are still managing. Though I must say that it's increasingly difficult to get my voice out there, and to get my voice out there, I should have had probably more support from certain people. Now, you mentioned InfoWars at the start of this broadcast, but I haven't really been much on InfoWars lately, because I was immediately after and just prior to the elections saying that if the elections were we will see the defeat of Donald J. Trump, we should focus immediately on 2024. We shouldn't really focus on something else. Instead, what happened was that we focused on something else, and that QAnon phenomena was used as a disinfo operation to trigger people. Alex Jones falls into a trap. He admitted it himself. I went on InfoWars, I think it was the last year of December 2020, and I said, you are going to have a very bad awakening soon, because it's not the way you are saying. I mean, they were believing to people like Steve Pitsnick, which is a complete disinfo agent.
Yeah.
And other people like that, which I didn't trust, and I knew that they were serving this information. So I was just saying, guys, don't go to Washington, D.C. It's a trap. I said it to a lot of my friends who are still thanking me for it. I mean, I have people from the Proud Boys, from other militia groups, 3%, all kinds of people who told me, Leo, we thank you, because we could have ended up in big trouble if we went there that way. So I was warning people. I was warning Alex not to trust Pitsnick and stuff. He went in a different direction. I don't know if we're gonna start working again together soon or not, but I think that he has made his choice, and he also promised me that he will keep on giving me visibility through Band.video, which is something that I desperately needed when I started to get all my channels removed from YouTube.
Right.
Unfortunately, nothing was done. I was promised a Band.video channel, never came, and so in the end, I'm just I'm just there trying to help out. If they call me back for a collaboration, it's no problem. I'm not working with them in the same terms as before, because I saw that they haven't been so supportive of my work.
Right.
And I was warning them about a series of things. Maybe if they listened to my warnings, they could have been a much better place today.
Right. I think when things happened back in January, and it had a tendency to scatter people. it shook the fabric of our nation in a way. Not. I mean, I think it's a tragedy that people like Joe Biggs are sitting in jail right now.
Absolutely, absolutely.
And
Rufio or other people that unfortunately gave their life to this nation, they are patriots. They are people who should definitely not be aligned with terrorists. The problem is that once you break the law and you go into the Capitol Hill and you become participant to a criminal act, you have to understand. That's why I was very skeptic already from the early month of December when they did this other. You remember there was a couple of other. There was one in the middle of November, and then there was one in early December in which they started to go to Washington, reaffirming their position in preparation for the 6th of January. But the thing is that the people who went already in those events, they reported me certain things, and those things they reported me kind of make me think this is a trap, because there was I don't trust particularly what has happened to the leadership of the Proud Boys. I don't know if Enrique Tario is being sincere or not. It's very suspicious the fact that a couple of days prior to the 6th of January he was involved into a situation in which basically shouldn't have been involved, because anybody knew that bringing weapons or bringing anything inside Washington, D.C. will have put you in trouble. So either you're doing it deliberately, or either I don't see the reason, or either you're stupid, and I don't think Enrique Tario is stupid. I hope it's not the case. I mean, Enrique was a nice guy to me. I interviewed him on my channel. I always supported the Proud Boys because they were the first ones to support me when I came here to the United States. They also took care of the security around my book presentations, and they did it free of charge, never had any problem because of them. Actually, I was threatened in one of the events, and they were the guys who called the FBI and made sure that these people who were threatening me were actually taken. I mean, they were brought to the attention of the law, and they actually became subject to an investigation, not the Proud Boys. So, I mean, for me, I think that we have to understand the Proud Boys have been also treated very badly. They are not a white supremacist group, simply because most of the Proud Boys I met, they're not even white. No. So,
Enrique Tario, it's
completely ridiculous, the whole thing. So I don't know what happened with Tario. I don't know if he was still kind of in between, because in the past he had some work as an informant for the FBI. If he's still in some capacity, was collaborating with them, and they told him to get out of the picture. I know that Joe Biggs, definitely, and Rufio, these people, they did a big mistake. And a lot of people I know, they told them to not go there. So they followed this field, which from when I started to see November, December, people talking about civil war, then at that point I said, okay, you want to do civil war, fine. Who are your generals?
Sure.
Where is your army? Where have you been trained? Who is your... I mean, to have a civil war, you have to have a structure of an army, because otherwise it's a joke.
It was a joke. I mean, it almost was like a Monty Python skit to watch those people, the grandmas, walk up into the Capitol with the police just standing there. The most powerful nation on Earth, supposedly, and the Capitol is under siege, and the senators and all the congressmen are on their knees, in that building, and so and it's just so surreal that they would try to pass that off as a truth. It's so manufactured.
Really, I remember still, and I hope that. Even the FBI, who records regularly all my conversation, goes back and traces those conversations I had in October and November with some of the people, where I said, listen, guys, Do you know what is a civil war? What is a civil war? How are you going to fight this civil war? Do you know
fight?
that you are up against the most powerful army in the world? Because it's
Yes.
your army, it's the United States Army. So, I mean, it's supposed to be allegedly the most powerful army in the world, though now they say that China is on the way to, while other countries are preparing. Right. But still, I mean, if we go back to the days of the Civil War, most of those officers were chosen inside lodges. Now, you were mentioning Freemasonry at the beginning of the show. Freemasonry itself in some states has become a joke. Here in the United States of America, we have for each state a Grand Lodge. There is no unified Grand Lodge for all the United States of America. Sure. So each state operates independently. Now, California, for example, which I reside in, has died, Masonically speaking, the moment this pandemic took off, because they prohibited people to go back into their lodges. They asked them to meet on Zoom. Most people at that point stopped paying their dues. And now they are requiring people to go back into the lodge. They are requiring people to actually be vaccinated or to have a test within the 72 hours prior to the lodge meeting. So that's completely ridiculous. A lot of friends said, okay, we're just going to go, little brothers, we're just going to go down the road in Arizona or somewhere else in Nevada. Though I don't know if in Nevada they're going to follow up on the same kind of rules they have in California. I think Arizona probably is going to be still the one that keeps on meeting in person. They kept on meeting in person even during the pandemic. But Freemasonry is not as relevant as it used to be, because Freemasonry has simply become another corrupt institution in the hands of the globalists. So we talk about 33, but I mean, I can show you here. This is public. I mean, I have here publications, local publications, you know, from the Scottish Rite here. Well, what's here?
Right.
And all this, I study all this all the time and see that this fraternity, unfortunately, has lost its traditions that are based into Christianity, and they have gradually this universal approach has meant more and more becoming atheist. Because yes, you want to open up to non-Christians, that's fine, but opening up to non-Christian, then inviting into the lodges the Satanists, the OTO, all these people, the Muslims, the thing, and this and that, and all the other, and then the very nature of this fraternity was lost.
As far as I know, there's only one G in that symbol, isn't there?
What do you mean? The
square. Well, that's what I'm saying. I mean, you're talking Satanist.
God, of course, but then they interpret it as geometry when it comes down.
Sacred, yes, harmony, and
they interpreted however they wish to interpret it. So, in 1877, the Grand Orient of France, like I explain in Volume 5 of my Confessions, is actually the one that started to go towards atheism, welcomes into the lodges the futures founders of the Soviet Union, from Lenin to Trotsky. And France became really the birthplace of that form of Freemasonry, which fortunately didn't become prevalent until in the last decades. People have said, those lodges are irregular, yes, but we still meet, to discuss matters of Masonic history or this or that. And then I started to see that more and more traditional Freemasons were drawn to the Grand Orient of France for their research. But then at that point, they were also drawn because, in a way, the Grand Orient of France is the one that has pushed for female Freemasonry, and so also this tradition that was born as a male fraternity also starts to get corrupted. Now, some people will say, well, it's about time that the women come into Freemasonry. No, because Freemasonry is a solar fraternity. Sure. Females represent the lunar current, and that's why if they eventually participate, they should participate on different terms. I must say, though, that at one point, I got my wife to experience Freemasonry. She wanted to experience it, so I said, okay, there is a half English lodge in London. Friends of mine, they're actually all members of Young Lodge who work in secret, because then they like to work in secret, to work with the women in secret. So it's kind of like, and then you have, of course, also the only for women lodges, which are prevalent now also in England, and they exist also here in California and other parts of the US. But it was a good experience, I must say. And my wife and I had a good experience, though it's always a little bit like we are working with something that ritually speaking, connects you with above. No? So if you are reflecting a solar current, it's not so easy for a woman who represents a lunar current and should have maybe a different form of priesthood altogether, because we know, for example, that the women were connected to the priesthood of Isis,
Yes.
I mean, these are, of course, matters of esoteric principles. Nowadays, though, the problem with Freemasonry basically is like every other institution has been corrupted by greed, by matter, by ignorance. And me and my wife started to go around here. They didn't even know she was a Freemason, and she was pretty shocked because she said, well, they don't recognize me, but they also, I told them that she was a Freemason. And there were some wives of the Freemason who were going to my wife and saying, well, they're doing a course for women who are married to Freemason to understand the Freemason. And my wife was like, I am a Master Mason. I went through the whole degrees.
Nice.
She was like, what is this? In the end, though, the great aspect of Freemasonry, which I liked and I continue to like until the beginning of the pandemic, was the social interaction of meeting different people and stuff, especially for me. I come from Italy. I didn't know anybody here. And I met some nice people.
Right. Then
one of my main friends here, unfortunately, died of COVID last year, who was an older gentleman who was a Freemason and a Shriner. And then I started to see a bit of hostility from Freemasons here because of my political stance. And I was very disappointed, I must say. I was very disappointed because Freemasonry should always leave out politics. But then I understood that instead in California, for example, the past Grand Master actually had talked openly against Donald J. Trump. And so I was very disappointed. I said, no, I don't want to have anything to do with a fraternity that is kind of like embodying the spirit of the enemy.
Okay, you mentioned infiltration. So are you familiar with the Masonic police force?
Well, of course, police, like lawyers or other, like in England, each category has their own lodges. Now, in America, that's not really been developed in the same way as Great Britain. In Great Britain, they have lodges for bankers, lodges for this, lodges for that. It's very sectorial. Here, the police force have always been part of Freemasonry.
Fraternal Order of Police?
No, then they created their own fraternal order, but they always been part also, first of all, of Freemasonry.
Well, the interesting thing is there was a group in LA County. They were prosecuted in LA County, and this was while you were still in Europe. And this is a very interesting story. So this is kind of where the 33 comes from. A gentleman who was their supposed Grand Master here, David Henry. He goes by the name of Henry X or David Inc. Henry, or went by that. He was also known as Chief Henry 33. So there's the 33. So I thought I would just throw that.
Most of the inspectors, even local inspectors in Freemasonry, meaning the ones who control the lodges and everything in the area, they're all 33. Because here in America, the ancient and accepted Scottish rite is the prevalent rite. But even the Scottish Rite has not been doing much since the beginning of the pandemic. There was a 32-degree that came to me and said, Leo, these people want to meet up on Zoom. The Supreme Council wants to meet up on Zoom. I thought it was ridiculous. And then I show you an article here, an article that came out just at the beginning of this pandemic, an article that says disease, quarantine, and Masonic relief 170 years ago. Now, if you go and read this, you see that at that time, the Freemasons actually were active in fighting the disease. And one of the first things I said when this crisis started was that I said Freemasonry would be judged by what you would be doing in the community. So Freemasons who are a fraternity based on helping others, on mutual help, in a moment of crisis like this, they should be around helping the people, not suspending all the activities of the lodges, meeting on Zoom and hiding in their houses. I mean, it was completely pathetic.
It's
the concept of Freemasonry was basically evaporated in front of my eyes because I didn't see the fraternity it used to be. I mean, they were talking here about how grand they were back in the days, helping people, going around and risking their lives, and now they were not even capable of going into their own lodges and they were hiding in their own houses. You see, here it says Masons are altruistic and they don't like asking for help. It says here. Okay, fine. But where was this altruistic? Listen, I had this friend of mine. He died on the 4th of July. None of the brothers from the lodge even bothered to call me or to send me a mail. I discovered that this guy died of a heart attack, probably caused by COVID, because he didn't care about going around. He was a musician, he was an artist, an actor. He was somebody who you couldn't close into his house. He said, Leo, I don't care. I just want to go around, you know. And of course, I said, okay, but then he died and nobody even, you know, called me up. So I said, what is this fraternity? They're not even bothering. They knew that I was his friend. They knew that he was very close to me, and they didn't even bother to call me or to even send me a message on Facebook. I was very disappointed by that.
Sure. Yeah. With this group that I was referring to, Leo, it actually goes to the highest levels now, to the highest levels of the vice presidency. Okay, so
I mean, when it comes down to Freemason, I can tell you that there is, unfortunately, at the moment, the left, the Democrats have taken control of most of the lodges.
Well, these people
is something denounced by also Freemasons who are still active in Freemasonry, who tell me, or who have abandoned Freemasonry because they saw that.
I don't think they were Masons, though. Is the thing, Leo? Is because this here's the interesting thing. Okay, so this guy, he was the Grand Master. Okay, but then there was another gentleman named Brandon Keel. Now, who was Brandon Keel? He went by his title was the Deputy Director of Community Affairs for the California Department of Justice at the time, under Kamala Harris. So now, and it gets really good. Okay, this is a really interesting story, and I thought you may find this fascinating. So what happened with that? They went around to different police forces, and they claimed that they were here first. They were 3,000 years old. They handed out cards. They met with police chiefs,
Well, they say that Freemasonry claims to be a few thousand years old. It's part of the myth, the allegory. We know that in practice, in reality, they are born in 1717 when they kind of brought these lodges together in an organized structure, which is a Grand Lodge from being separated lodges. Probably the first lodges came together maybe 5 centuries ago, gradually in England and Scotland, and maybe then developed into more serious operative forms respected to the speculative Freemason was born definitely in 1717 in the way we know it now. Before that, it was still in a very embryonic stage, but the fact is that they claim to bring together a number of mystery schools that are much older, and for that reason they claim to be thousands of years old, not because they are actually as the institution. So that is
it was strange, because when they were raided, there were 3 of them that were raided, and so they claimed to be police officers. They weren't. They were charged with impersonating peace officers. When they were raided, they had badges, uniforms. They had, and again, they were going around networking.
So they were not police.
No, they were not police, and they were charged on May the 6th.
It's very strange that you tell me this story, because a similar thing happened in Italy. There was basically a structure that was dismantled, I think, last year, and they went on for a number of years with badges similar to police uniforms. They like to dress up. One thing about the Freemason is that in the lodges, one is given all kinds of titles and all kinds of regalia and medals and things. Now, some people, that happens very rarely, they bring it to the next level. They want to create some kind of para-Masonic, maybe police or military force, and this kind of gives them importance, and maybe they even manage to get some credibility, and at times they even manage to get some money from some people who will maybe pay to join this kind of thing.
So here's the twist.
Now, I want to ask you, was it like they were involved in fraudulent activities regarding the people who were joining them, or they were trying to impersonate and fraud people? So what was the meaning of?
Well, I think what the meaning was, the gentleman worked directly. His title, I guess, through the government was Information Officer 1, but he was a community affairs. He was a deputy director of community affairs. So they met, and even though Henry was the Grand Master, Keel did the majority of the talking, because the police actually set up, after one meeting, the police set up a sting that occurred in April of 2016. And so at the time, again, Keel was working for Kamala Harris. Now, if I get predator droned, take this video and go ahead and post it as many places as you can, because he also is on the net. You can find it. Keel was going to run for U.S. Senator. Which also Kamala Harris wanted to run for. But they were arrested. All of a sudden there was this arrest. They go to court. Now here's a little bit of synchronicity. As I'm looking this up, they go to court on April the 18th. 3 were charged. David Henry, Brandon Keel, and a lady named Tonette Hayes. And she was known as a minister. Keel... the long and short of it.
Minister meaning of this group, or minister?
Yes, of this group. Okay. So what happens, and here comes the twist, Leo, is on April the 18th, they go to court. Monday, April the 18th of 2016. And so they go to court, and the charges, and the AP headline is "Case Crumbles." For the prosecutors, this is the AP headline. Basically, it's running just a few the LA Times, just a few LA based periodicals, all the same AP story. Okay, basically, what happens is the case is dropped against Keel. There's a motion to subdue the information, and guess what happens? On my birthday, April 19th of that year, here comes the headlines that Henry has died of a pulmonary embolism. Yeah, I thought that might raise your eyebrows. And so, that is but Keel is on he's in all the way back to 2012. I mean, and to see the videos, it is a large group of people. They're all mostly African American. I didn't see any other race, but
well, I mean, they have also principle of Freemasonry, which is
sure.
only for African Americans. So I mean, they have also.
Okay. And I'm not really, I'm not a Mason. I'm not familiar with the,
I mean, it would be interesting
lodges,
to know. It would be interesting to know what was their connection to Freemasonry. It seems to me, from the description you made of that guy titled 33, that it might be a spin-off, like in the past it has happened, that the people who have maybe a high degree in Freemasonry, they create spin-off organizations.
Sure.
Some of these spin-off organizations end up becoming even religions or great organizations. Others fail completely, and others are charlatans, and they are trying to grab a buck here and there, like I said before, by impersonating something they are not. So I mean, it depends. It's a very very particular kind of world that we are talking in. It's at times even a make-believe world. So
it is.
Be very, very careful.
You said, I just thought it was interesting. I'll shoot a link to you to take a look.
And I think if you told me a story like this in Italy, I would say, well, we have a bunch of these stories like this popping up all the time. I could write a book this thick about what has happened in Italy with people creating chivalric orders, fake police forces, fake intelligence agents, all spin-offs of maybe renegade lodges, deviant lodges, the P2, the P3, the P4, the P5. So, I mean, it's like, but here in America it's different, because here in America we have mostly one form of Freemasonry which is generally accepted for each state. There is maybe some lodges that are certified, even if it's not the correct term, granted their patent maybe from a Grand Lodge abroad, and at times they can be also lodges that belong to a Grand Lodge abroad which is not recognized, like for example Mexicans who have Grand Lodges that are not recognized by, for example, the Grand Lodge of California, but they still operate here. Or the Grand Lodge of California doesn't recognize the Grand Lodge de France or the Grand Orient of France, but they have, I know, for example, for certain, at least a couple of lodges here in California.
That's something that's also funny, because this group claimed that they had jurisdiction in 33 states and Mexico, which kind of, so I don't know what that means, but again,
okay. Like I said,
it was
a group.
Yeah, I gotcha.
I mean, in Mexico there is various Grand Lodges. There is not one. Here, like I said, we have, because Freemasonry is so close to the institutions, they never got Freemasonry to run wild in schism and started to build up other situations. Also because there wasn't the necessity. Nowadays, I tell you the truth, for how things are developing, I'm afraid that in the future there might be some schisms here in official Freemasonry.
Oh, absolutely.
Because of the fact that the very basic tenets of Freemasonry are not respected by those who currently have the jurisdictions here. When like it happened here in California, you started to have such a big crisis that they were forced to close down their bank, some of their bank accounts and stuff, because they were not receiving any more money from the people, that they will not pay their dues. Okay, the temple is shut because of COVID. You still need to rent the building, maybe.
Right.
The people who are Freemasons, they say, why should I rent a building I'm not using? Exactly. So, I mean, it creates a problem then, a practical problem.
And that's the same thing with all the businesses. I mean, we are seeing the shutdown, in the car business. We can't get computer chips No used cars. I mean, and you know, maybe to move away from that, because when you were last on, like I said, it was a different world.
Well, it was a different word, but it was a word that I was already envisioning will go this direction. Absolutely. It was just that people didn't read my books, because in volume 2 of my Confessions, that came out in 2015,
right,
I wrote that there will be a virus and that everybody will be locked up and that you will be living exactly the way you're living now. So, I mean, if people want to ignore my books, they can continue ignoring my books, but I will continue writing the future in my books. For example, volume 6.66.
Yes.
This was published in 2000 and early 2019. Right. And it has the symbol of what?
Of the staff and the serpent.
The World Health Organization.
Yes. Yep.
So.
Well, and that's the thing. You said on the podcast last time, you said that your work has it's been a work of perseverance because you see it as a mission.
Yeah, of course, it's not a work that brings me millions in my bank account. So that's for sure. I'm definitely losing more money than I've been gaining.
Right, I understand. Has your mission changed?
People say, "Oh, but he's doing it because he wants to sell books."
Right,
guys. It depends where you start from. If you start from having a villa and a swimming pool and a thing, and you do the books and you end up in a small apartment, then you understand that you're not doing it for money.
Right. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Has it changed? I mean, as far as we saw the theft of the election. We saw the unleashing of COVID. We saw the Great Reset start to happen. We saw everything. Has your mode changed? Has your focus changed? Is there?
No, actually, the thing is that you see that is very important for me to rely on this show, especially because I know that your show is followed by patriots. I wish the patriots have listened to me from the very moment I came here to warn them here in the U.S. that what was happening in Europe would soon come here to the U.S. Mm-hmm. If I had to flee Europe, it was because I was persecuted just like you are persecuted now on a daily basis. I couldn't make a post on Facebook. I will have the police standing at my door, even breaking my door, or bringing into a mental asylum if I didn't say or think what I was supposed to say or think. All these things were denounced by me, and at one point, me and my wife felt our life were threatened, so we had to leave. Sure. We came here into the US hoping that people will start to listen to me. And I must say that people were listening to me, especially after I was in Austin and I gained a lot of attention and people were subscribing to my channels and all that. People were really following my work. And then I even had the luck of conducting a show with Roseanne Barr for a period. And then I did a lot of work with InfoWars. But then, of course, people got into their... They started to actually, instead of saying, wow, this guy warned us, so let's see what he says, what we're going to be doing next, what we should do next. No, they started to say, oh, shit. They started to panic. And, yep. and they actually said, no, this guy's too much for me, or I don't want to hear to him. It's not like this because I follow QAnon, or I follow what the other guy says, or I know it better because I'm reading the reports every day of this site or this other site. They didn't understand that my work wasn't based on a reading. It was based on a life experience. And you can't get a life experience through reading a site, a book, or watching a documentary. So I wish that people, instead of disappearing or maybe not having the persistency to follow me around. Okay, my channel has been closed. Okay, my website or my profile was closed down. Let's see where he is. Let's go and search for him. Mm-hmm. They didn't do that. And so in the end, me and my wife are like, wow, we came here to the US thinking that people will listen to us. Instead, they have all disappeared.
Yeah. And that's what I was talking about earlier when I said that, the people got scattered, almost like, in the Bible when Christ was crucified and all the apostles were scattered. and he had no one. And and I'm not before people go crazy on the internet, I'm not relating you to Christ, but
No,
I'm just saying
I
that the
understand
body,
your concept, sure.
yeah. And so yeah, it was. And what did they attack?
But the thing is, okay, I came here. I showed that I was willing to cross the whole of the United States to bring you the message, going to places I've never been. I don't think that even your average American has done the whole of Route 66 up and down, or gone in crazy places around the US, just
Sure.
driving around, trying to spread spread the news about this book, volume 6.66 on Route 66. It was a message. When you go and read this book, AI, Elon Musk, what is going to happen before 2030, the Jesuits, the whole thing, the AI is a threat. If they read what I said, they will be one step ahead in this battle. As they have ignored me up until now, then I am not saying, that there is no hope for them. No, the hope is always there, because you said that your question was, how has your life changed? My life hasn't changed one bit, because I was persecuted first before. I am persecuted now. I'm actually here in the United States of America, more free than I was when I was back in Europe. And so I'm happy I'm still alive.
Sure.
But if tomorrow morning the FBI breaks through my door, or I'm persecuted, I'm not like, big deal. I've been there, I've done that, and I can do it again. I was actually pleasantly surprised when I got my citizenship. I got my green card. I'm gonna hopefully get my citizenship in a couple of years.
Sure.
I was surprised by what they knew about me, the names they came out. And I was like, wow. Right. So these people know everything. Sure. And at this point, and they were not bad about it. Actually, fortunately, I got it the month prior to Trump then losing the elections, which unfortunately happened. But my advice to Trump was, focus on 224 from the moment you lose, not focus on the fact you have lost. Otherwise, you're going to get into some kind of loop. Sure. And to see Trump in some kind of party in Mar-a-Lago talking about the fact he stolen the election, it makes me sad. It's not the 45th president I imagined.
Sure.
The 45th president I imagined should have been resilient to all this and say, no worries, we lost now, we're going to be back once the people realize that Joe Biden is absolute shit. Now, it doesn't even have to prove anything, because he just needs to get Biden to screw up America like he's doing every day, and that's it.
That's that's what I said.
The main problem here is the election in 2024 needs to not suffer the same problems it suffered in 2020. That is the only problem we should be focusing here on. The rest is absolutely irrelevant.
Sure. Let's go in a different direction. A lot of people, a lot of people get you on. You've done thousands of interviews,
Yeah, unfortunately, I must say that the ones that survive probably are the oldest ones by now. Not all of them, but because they are like in the history of YouTube, they don't get removed, no? Then the work I've done in the last 6 years since I joined the InfoWars, they have been removed like
gone. Well, I listened to an interview you did on Tradcat Night.
Yes.
And those were fascinating. Way longer to dig into than we have, but
Tradcat Night is a traditional Catholic point of view. We are working with people who are Vaticanist. The guy in charge, Eric Gajewski, is an old friend of mine. He's a specialist. He works doing only that. Working like a Vaticanist is a completely different thing than working in a spectrum that covers all the geopolitical scene along with everything else. So I must say that the work he's doing is very good, and he continues doing it. He's been very lungimirant, very foreseeing of what the censorship will be doing. So he also moved on his own platform in time. And so, no, it's continuing. Collaboration continues monthly with Eric, a very good guy.
Well, even back in 2013, you were talking about the Vatican, the Russia connection, the Pope. And I mean, again, it's just aged like a fine wine, And so,
even if you go to 2008 to 2006, and you still manage to find, it's not easy to find still the old GCN network interviews we used to do with Greg Zimanski back in 2006 or 7. But if you find them on the one on the RBN network, there were a lot of things that if you go back and listen, I mean, I was talking about the hegemony of China. China will be the example for the rest of the New World Order in 2006, 2007, and people were watching me like,
what? Yeah.
So, or the fact that the Pope has a gay lover, or the next Pope will be a Jesuit, this will be blackmail, It actually brought me a lot of pressure. I was arrested for espionage in Norway. I was persecuted various times in Italy, arrested, tortured. I mean,
I want to talk. I'm sure you don't get asked this a lot.
It's not that you talk and things don't come with consequences. So it's not like I talk and it doesn't come with consequences. It comes with consequences. Then the fact that I'm still alive, still alive is just because I always give myself into the grace of God, and I continue this battle as with the Holy Spirit always trying to protect me. Hopefully, continues.
Your music. There was a point where there are some videos out there still of the lost tracks. Talk about your DJ, background and that passion. Not a lot of people talk to you about that.
I mean, I've managed to become one of the most sought after DJs in Europe in the 90s. It was a very different DJ scene from nowadays, where you have these super priced DJs that go into these fancy parties with 1 million lights playing rubbish music. I was actually playing quality music in very exclusive places worldwide. I ended up playing for the Kremlin in the Bolshoi Theater in Russia. I ended up playing for the Prince of Italy on a lake in Switzerland, for the
nice.
Son of the King of Italy, past King of Italy. Then I played in most incredible places around the world. It was an incredible job. Music-wise, it was not something I did aspiring to commercial music or wanting to become a commercial phenomenon. But I ended up in 96 because I was working with one of the most prestigious clubs in Europe, the Tresor in Berlin, which is still one of the most prestigious clubs in Europe. I ended up with an album produced basically by them in the charts, but I ended up also in all the newspaper, the magazines. There was a lot of, and before that, in 1990, I had made another couple of records that became very popular that led to that. And they were all based on my esoteric experiences. So music was connected to esotericism. So there wasn't really much distancing from what I was doing in the occult or with the, between brackets, Illuminati and my music business. They were all part of the same show.
Sure.
And in the sense that the more I was becoming known within those circles, which I left then in 2006 when I started my exposure work, the more I was getting invited here, there, and everywhere, and I was given great opportunities. Then it's obvious that when you say no to certain things and you go against them, that's the moment in which they persecute me. In fact, there was a period between 2003 and 2006 in which there was an internal struggle between me and certain secret society. But most of these stories, as you know, they are given in my books. So.
Sure. Yeah. One last thing
my
before.
passion for music is a very serious passion. I mean, I was up listening to radios like WBLS in New York, Philly 99 FM in Philadelphia. And why was I brought up with this kind of radios? Because I was back in Italy, because I had a bass player who was a friend of my father, a very great bass player who played with some of the greatest bands in the world, who actually was touring around recording these tapes. And then he had a passion for dance music in the sense quality. I'm not talking about funk, dance, disco. And so he used to record these tapes. I used to listen to them. He used to bring them to my father, to me, when I was like very young, 10, 11 years old. I had my mother who worked at the Vatican Radio, worked at this Christian Catholic radio, who became one of the main radios in the Vatican. Then she also worked for a period with the Vatican TV. There was very early stages of radio and TV, so people were very much enthusiastic about things. And I was a little child. I started 10 years old, fairy tales on the radio. Then the priest told me, if you study and if you come to serve Mass, I will let you have your own radio show in 3 years from now. So I studied, I served Mass as an altar boy, and I saw a lot of things happening, not all good things. I learned a lot of tricks from the people who teach me from the Vatican on how the media work, a lot of tricks. And so also the whole reality of the Vatican, which I later describe, comes from personal experiences.
Right.
Once I remember the Italian police even broke through the door in a radio owned by a Monsignor who basically didn't pay his copyright taxes or something for the TV transmissions. He had a radio and a TV, and the police broke through. They literally broke the door and they hurt me really much on my hand. I was young. I was like 12, 13. These people came with guns and stuff. And it was a scandal. It was a scandal, of course. Immediately the bishop called this and that, and the police had to. But it was, for me, I remember a piece of my skin because of this police. So I was like, I had some very strong experience at a very early age. I remember I was 16 working into this club, and suddenly a guy was pointing a gun like this at me at the exit of the club because they had an argument with the bouncer. I happened to come out with my records. Right. So, I mean, it's like, but I like the good music. I like very much early hip hop, electro, Tim Westwood in London. I used to go to this underground club in London on a Sunday afternoon. I used to also know a lot of people from the music business because my grandmother was very famous she was the public relation of William Burroughs or Brian Gyson. And they were worshipping these figures. So I will end up with, having lunch with the Pet Shop Boys, a dinner with the dancer from Duran Duran or the singers from Brodsky, all kinds of weird people from the new romantic era. I knew everybody in London. So when I was 16, my grandmother actually got me a job at a club called Legends in Bond Street, which is one of the most exclusive streets in London. And this club was the most exclusive club. There were Simple Minds coming there, Rolling Stones, Mick Jagger dancing, people coming to Paul Weller of the Style Council coming to put records while I was playing records. It was incredible experiences. So I now have a friend who lives in Hollywood here in Los Angeles, who's called Jay Strongman, who used to be a very famous DJ in the 80s. And he's actually now DJing for people like Elon Musk. He's married with that dancer, one of the actresses in Eyes Wide Shut, which I interviewed, by the way, on my show. One of the interviews, which unfortunately I think was removed by YouTube. I never managed to keep. But it's for me, music was about quality. So I was never after making a lot of money, but I produced a lot of records, a lot of quality music, and I traveled very much around the world, met the most incredible people. I mean, for me, the people who were inspiration were people like Quincy Jones, El Bianco, people, great producers, Jimmy Jam. I mean, a lot of people that nowadays are historic in the music business, you know?
I have a friend who posts a lot about the difference between the Great American Songbook and the rock and roll era, and how, in his eye, that is when the decline of America sort of kicked off, the rock and roll revolution. And we talk a lot, we talked about, how Satan was likened to a musical instrument.
I wrote a book in Italy, never translated in the English language, called Illuminati and the Music of Hollywood. And it's a book which I wrote about this subject. And at the same time, I must say, I'm here in Palm Springs because of my passion for Frank Sinatra, for certain kind of music, which is transcends, I think, but I mean, rock and roll. Of course, at one point, Frank Sinatra realized that the Democratic Party was going into the wrong direction, and that's why he left the Democratic Party in the early 70s and never looked back. And he was very, very much, he understood certain things.
Mm-hmm. One last thing, man. I promised him I would ask you. I'm sure you've heard. I'm sure you know of the channel. It no longer.
If you say rock and roll, I would say that rock and roll is part of that move. We start with the Beat generation, and then that's why Brian Guys, William Burroughs, Kerouac, all those people. But then we have the 60s. We have all those gurus.
The Doors. The Doors and Jim Morrison. I mean, if you look at it,
you see, California became an experiment for the people high up, because they started this experiment in England with the Tavistock Institute. The experiment in England could only go so, you could only bring it as far as, and then here instead you had the LSD. Bring the LSD in California and experiment further. And so the experiment then was carried further. But if we go and see the people who carried on the experiment and the people behind, we had Huxley who moved here. We had people who foreseen that what will happen. So in the end, this has been a very wild ride that started in Switzerland 100 years ago. The New Age movement in embryonic stage started in Mount Verita in Switzerland, developed then by the Theosophical Society, was eventually then arrived here in California, always thanks to the Theosophical Society. I think that the Theosophical Society was highly responsible for modern Satanism, for also the twists and turns of New Age, which in the end was infiltrated and manipulated by the Jesuits. And when we go and see really the prologue that was never published, never made public, of 2001 Space Odyssey, it's all there. It's actually published online, the transcript of it. But if you go and read it, it was a Jesuit, a rabbi, and some scientists, and it's all about the threat of artificial intelligence, the extraterrestrial origins of humanity, overpopulation, the pandemic.
Exactly where we are. Exactly where we are.
That's it.
One last thing. Scott Spidell with the InfoWar Armory, the now defunct YouTube masterpiece. Scott Spidell, I told him that you would be coming on, and he's a Canadian. He's a Canadian patriot. He helps a lot post with Pirate InfoWars and whatnot. And so he wanted your thoughts on Canada. And as far as what you see in the future with Canada and the Chinese connection and the removal of God, but you can go to Lowe's. And what's your take on that, Leo?
Canada is under the Queen of England. The whole of the Commonwealth is under a project which, of course, is at a stage which is even more advanced than here, in the sense that globalism is reaching Canada before they reach the United States, and Kevin Trudeau is probably the politician of the future. If we let the Democrats go on with their plan, we will have people like Kevin Trudeau in 10 or 15 years here in the US. So, I mean, they are ahead in what is wrong. So we shouldn't follow them. We hope that we will retain our American way of life. But unfortunately, Canada is it's a libtarded experiment that continues to produce libtards, and everything that is in this art and everything is very European, no, as an imprint, also very socialistic. The people who live in those latitudes already have a different mindset, and that's why we find at the same latitude Scandinavia, which is completely socialist. It seems that the more north you go, and the more you are able to already project that futuristic, socialist, communist society, technocratic of tomorrow with the electric cars and all the BS. So I would say that unfortunately it's a place I will not reside or even visit in the future, because it's not really my, as the British would say, it's not my cup of tea, definitely.
Well, at some point we won't be able to get across because the Chinese will be guarding the Canadians for them. And so
the thing when it comes down to the Chinese, of course, Canada sold out to China a lot of the, but unfortunately they have also lately Great Britain has realized that Chinese are very aggressively sorting to even craft their own education. They're buying the most prestigious schools, and a lot of those Canadians from the upper classes always sought after going to some boarding school in good old England for their thing. But if their boarding school is owned by the Chinese, I don't know what kind of education they're going to get. It's like, but it's not like here in the US we are so far behind, because if we go into our Harvard, if you go in Georgetown, if you go, it's like the problem here resides on the fact that unfortunately there has been lack of vision by the conservative world. The conservative world is only capable in the last decades of criticizing, pointing out what are the problems, but they are not capable of fighting them. And that's where we go when we said before, Trump should have immediately intervened in the social network censorship deal, because then it just went escalating until he found himself out of it. He could have stopped 2 or 3, 4 years ago, immediately when he came into power, this whole thing by escalating. He could have said, no, sorry, politicians can't be taken out of social networks because of their role. They
absolutely. That
should be. Journalists, the same. Now, I find myself on Facebook still, but to find myself on Facebook, I don't have it here, but I will have to show you. I had to receive a physical letter from Facebook headquarters with a special code. So basically, they know where I live.
Right.
And only by doing that, I was granted the possibility of continuing my work as a journalist. Because as a journalist, they told me that I treat sensitive information, and so I have to be monitored, and they don't tell you that you have to be monitored, but basically they tell you that you are treating very sensitive information, so you are a journalist and we have to, and so you have to receive the physical letter. It's better in a way because I haven't been blocked as much since this whole thing came to me. But it's also, I'm always like looking at the next step. What are these people going to do next? What is the next step? Are they going to come through the door? So I don't know. It's going to be like Italy.
Well, you mentioned, you talk about, CERN and things coming through these spiritual battles that are taking place in the physical world. You talk about all that in your books as well. And who's pulling the strings and everything. But I think we're at a point now with the vaccination programs.
The thing is that now, that's why I wish people will have kept on following my work, because my work now wants to go to the next stage. We have discussed for over 20 years how things will end up being, and we are here. So either we end up then repeating ourselves and saying, oh, I told you so, I told you so, I told you so. It doesn't really change anything. So my solution. And my solution is a practical solution. And that's why in Italy, I moved to the next stage. Here, unfortunately, I don't have the same time of following any longer. I hope maybe in the future, I don't know if the Americans suddenly wake up and rediscover little Zagami. But in Italy, we have a plan. The plan is 2022, end of 2020, if the Italians have enough balls to pull it off, they can change the world. They can occupy the Vatican permanently, and they can change the history of the planet by a new renaissance. A new renaissance at this point means something different. Italy is not America. Italy doesn't have the same constitution, doesn't have the same republic. Italy was forced into a republic by the American Democrats who won the war, because it was the Democrats who were in charge in 45 and 46 when they did the pool that was issued so people could choose between monarchy and republic. And it was tricked by the OSS. So basically they have a republic which is born in by a fraud. Now, when you have a republic which is born in a fraud, one thing is that you are born with a revolution, like good old United States of America that is fighting those assholes in England that are still assholes and will keep on being assholes. But the thing is, not because they are, but because of their sovereign, their king or queen, always have that kind of maximum respect. They seem to be coherent, at least up until now. But even the monarchy in England is starting to become incoherent. That's why you have people like Prince Harry married with this idiot who ends up on Oprah Winfrey with the whole thing is demented. But I'm saying Italy needs to inspire the world with something new, completely new. I hope that's possible. And I hope that's possible before the end times goes to the next stage, because Rome will be destroyed, because Rome is the beginning and the end of Christianity. Yes. We are talking about Jerusalem and Rome. These are the most holy places. And so for Rome, my plan will be different. Let's see if we manage.
You mentioned Rome, and it was, I guess, that second beast, as I understand it, that was like a leopard, had the feet of a bear, and the mouth of a lion. And so again, I think we're seeing a lot unfold with the vaccines. You talk about, but I think we're going to see maybe in the next 18 months, off the top of my head, people they shouldn't be able to deny what's going on any longer. There are people.
If the Americans want to become wants to stay relevant for their mission in the end of times, they simply have to follow their mission in the end times, which is dictated by the Gospels, dictated by the Bible. If they don't follow that mission, if they accept the compromises simply because compromises are the ones they're following, and I don't want to go into the whole vaccine thing, because that would simply increase the censorship around this video. Yeah. But I mean, you know what I mean. I mean, the thing is that we have already 200 million people that have given in.
Mm-hmm. Yes. You likened America.
So how many people will be left off the hook? And how many people will be capable to resist what's coming? And do you want to give up your way of life, or you want to continue with all these compromises that will simply make you a slave? It's a very hard moment for everybody, because you see, I talk with the younger patriots. I was talking with a couple of younger patriots the other day, and you see, I'm 51 now. They are maybe 31, so they are maybe 20 years younger than me, no? Mm-hmm. And they say, Leo, but we thought that we had more time. We thought we had more time. You have always warned us, but we thought we had more time. I said, no, there's no more time. So the thing is that there's no more time, but there is a solution. Instead, they were like really depressed. Oh, I don't know what to do now. I just take care of my family. I'm not doing anything anymore. I'm not going to go on Facebook or other things anymore. I'm just going to focus on my life, because otherwise I'm going to lose even this. it's like they're giving up on hope because at one point, we have to be honest, a lot of people have equiparated Trump with a Messiah figure.
Right.
Trump is not the Messiah.
Golden.
Trump is a helper eventually of the Messiah, but he's not the Messiah.
No.
So the moment in which you realize that he's not God, he's not the Messiah, he's not going to come and help you now that he's not the president any longer because he can hardly help himself. So what is the next stage? And that is the realization, and that's where I wanted to really work very closely. And I actually extended my reach even to Trump or to his sons. I said, if they want me to help out, I'm here. It's not a problem. But you are dealing with forces that are from this world and from the other world,
right?
And that are manifesting more and more aggressively. And at one point or the other, regardless of what the Pentagon is going to tell us in June, so in 1 month from now,
right?
We are fighting the demonic.
So. Yes. Yeah, absolutely. Leo, we're at an hour and 19 minutes.
Thank you so much for having me on. Again, hope that our journey will continue.
Yes.
Hope that I will speak to you next time and we will manage to tell us more positive things. I hope that sooner or later we can meet up again in person. That is something that I miss from the old days. All these Zoom conferences and virtual things have really become tiring. I would like to meet people in person again.
If you find yourself in West Virginia, Mount Hope is a delightful town built by old Italian immigrants. There's the McDonald Warren Lodge number 103 in the center of town. So you absolutely would enjoy it. But yeah, absolutely, the invitation, if you ever find yourself out this way, that would be fantastic.
I think that what I'm going to do when in the next few months, at one point or the other, I will start taking the road again with my car, because I'm never going to take an airplane again. If taking an airplane means taking a test, taking a vaccine, taking a vaccine passport, taking this or the other. I am stuck here. The fact that in Europe now, we can only go back if we have vaccine passports, where they can go and screw themselves. And I'm never going to put my foot back in Europe until things change.
Well, this is, and I want to, for our listeners, and we'll wind it down here, but for our listeners, it's imperative that they understand that this is the deciding point, hot or cold. You either are going to persevere, you're going to overcome, you're going to reject it, you're going to reject at one point the world and all your family, and you're going to watch all your family at some point be blighted out by sores. You're going to see all kinds of things that you did. Well, a year ago, we didn't think we would be here. So in 3 years from now, where are we going to be? And hopefully in 7 or 8.
But the thing is that I would like to those young patriots that ask me, Leo, but now they don't have hope. I think that the message is that Jesus Christ is our only hope. Always, it was before, it is now, it is going to be in the future. And if you don't have hope, it's simply because you have lost your vision of Christ and your vision of Christianity. You have maybe polluted it in some way, so you have lost connection with the Holy Spirit. So to those people, I say, regain your connection to the Holy Spirit, and you will be fine, and you will have no problems, because life is great when you have faith, and if you die, you always know that you have a greater life in the afterlife when you have faith. So I also tell people you shouldn't be scared of death, because death is limiting, definitely very limiting. So limiting in the sense as a concept, people think they die, that's it. No, they die. It's just this shell that dies, but the soul stays. And so we need to live on our faith in Jesus to survive the difficult moments ahead. God bless you.
Old Death, where is thy sting? Leo Zagami, leozagami.com. Thank you. We'll have to do it again. If you ever want a show on Powder Monkey
This
Radio, check
this
it
book,
out. The books, people.
and this book,
support
and
his
even the
work.
book of my Illuminati Princess is good.
Yes.
Just get the books, guys, because sooner or later we're gonna be left going back to the good old books. So when the digital world is gonna disappear,
Paperback books. Donate. Go to his site. He has a PayPal.
So you have a radio. You're doing now.
Powder Monkey Radio, yes, sir.
Powder Monkey Radio. Well, I definitely will check it out, and I will
check it out. If you want it, yeah, you did a jingle for it. You're actually running. I'm running a jingle, but I hadn't. It was the first little bit, first time I'd ever really used Skype.
Just invite me next month. We have another chat.
So that's good, brother.
Lose contact. All the best.
So much.
Dick.
Leo Zagami.
Purple shrines on our head. Phenobarbital makes us dead. To heaven's gate we will go. To climb aboard
for God, for country, for truth, for justice, for the Republic. You're listening to the Powder Monkey Podcast on PirateInfoWars.com.
The comet's coming, it's getting near. Our conscience numbing, we have no fear. I called my friends up, and they're all here. We're putting in vodka, yeah.
Was that you?